So I have this old Mercedes-Benz up here on the lift. This has not driven in 7 years. So I suspect I'm going to find some problems. And the problems could be many. But the first thing you want to do is make sure that the calipers, pistons are working properly. And you want to make sure they're not leaking, because if they're leaking, then you're going to either have to replace the caliper with a rebuilt unit or rebuild it yourself. So what I've done is I've removed the wheel and I've removed the 2 pins on this Bendix caliper here. You're looking here at these brake sensor wires. I know some of you that worked on these old Mercedes before, you know how hard it is to get these sensor wires out without damaging them. You try pulling on them with a regular pair of pliers, you can damage them. So look at this tool here. Suddenly this tool, which was designed for removing a small hose on diesel engines, I can come right in here like this and grab a hold of this sensor wire and just twist it a little bit and pull it out. Because just grabbing onto it, I can't even get it out of there. So we'll pull this sensor wire out. Okay. Then we can take and grab a hold of it here and pull it out that way. See that? Look at how slick that is. It's really hard to remove these. A lot of times you don't replace them. In fact, this one's worn. But sometimes if the sensor wire is not that bad, you may want to replace it. And even pulling it out of the pad here can sometimes damage it without having the tool like this to kind of pry it out. So I'm going to get a hold of it like this very carefully. Work it out like that. There we go. Okay, that one's okay if I wanted to reuse it. Now, using the same tool, let's get these spring clips out. I love it when you got the right tool to do the job. Okay, now using the same tool, watch how we can use this to get these pads out. Isn't that slick? Now once we get the pads out, the next step is to see whether or not these pistons move in freely. Now we're looking for 2 things. We're looking for them moving in freely. We're also looking for them leaking. If you push them in and they leak, then you're going to have to reseal the caliper. Okay, this one's totally frozen. Let's see if we get this one moving in. Okay, this one's moving. See that? Not real easy, but look at the leak. See that? Look at the fluid leaking out of there. If you pull your pads out and you either have a frozen caliper, it won't move with a pry bar like this, or when you push it in, it's leaking, then no amount of exercising or power flushing is going to help. We're going to have to rebuild this caliper right here. Now let's go take a look at the left front one and see if that's any different. Here's another good illustration why when you have one of these old cars that's been sitting for a while, you better be prepared for some major brake work. This really needs new rotors too. There's quite a lip here, and this has got a lot of corrosion pitting in the rotor face. Look at the pads. The pads are all rusty. So the pads have to be replaced. Now we're discovering that once we moved the piston a little bit, look at how much fluid is leaking out of the caliper. So you're going to have to take this off and reseal it. Let's see if this one is moving both pistons on both sides. Okay, that one's going in easy, but that's the one that's really leaking fluid. Let's see if this one's moving in. Yeah, this one's moving okay. So this one's going to be a little bit easier to reseal than the one on the other side with that stuck piston. But at this point, I've got some major brake work to do. You know, flushing the fluid in the system and doing an exercise program on this car is just futile. We're going to have to do some major brake work because this car has sat just too long. So you can see that the rolling test I did earlier on this car really gave me a false indication. Once again, it let me know that I could drive the car down the road and probably my brakes weren't going to overheat. But it certainly didn't tell me the condition of the brakes on this car. You can see from watching this video that these brakes are in terrible condition. Even though my initial tests, I did pick up a warm wheel, by the way, but my initial tests were, oh, well, these are okay. The car was stopping okay. It wasn't really pulling to the right or to the left. So that's a really good example, okay? I just want to really encourage you, when you're checking out the brakes on your own car, the best way to do it is to get those wheels off, pull the pads out, and check each piston. Also, at the same time, you're going to be checking those brake hoses. We're going to be talking about hoses in detail in one of my other videos coming up soon. Now, through this whole process, I came up with a new kit. I call it the brake pad and caliper service kit, because if you're going to be doing some inspection on your brake systems, you really need to have a few tools and a few supplies on hand to fully service those calipers, so you're not going to have problems in the future. Let me show you that kit now. Now, I have to admit that during the process of developing this kit, we found out there's a problem. And that's this ring. It's a protection ring over the seal on the caliper piston that fits on top of that rubber seal. And if you use the pry bar to do too much exercising without protecting this seal, you can see what happens. You bend it up and pop it off. Now, you can't leave this off. This is very important. This protects the seal, keeps the seal in place, and also eliminates the amount of heat that's generated to that rubber seal too. So what I've come up with is a protection plate. This is a 1/16 inch thick piece of aluminum. Now, this is cut so you can use it on the front caliper like this and on the rear caliper like this. I want to show you how this bar works. We're going to put it in like this, so if he pushes against this hard with the piston, it's going to spring back and make it easy to get the bar out. Okay, go ahead and pump up the piston. Okay, you can see it coming down there. All right, a little bit more. Okay, see how it's springing back? Now, I'm going to go ahead and push it in. I'm going to push this piston back in by prying against that protection plate. Look at how much force this is taking to push this piston back in on this caliper. This should not be happening. If you have a proper working caliper and a good flexible brake hose, this should just push right back in without a lot of force. These are the items that I include in my brake pad and caliper service kit. Anytime you go to change your brake pads, or when you want to test the function of each one of your pistons and your calipers, you're going to need something like this, either this kit or the equivalent. The heart of the kit is this bar. Now, we specially modify this here in the shop. There's a reason we use this particular bar. One thing, when you push down on the brake piston and it collapses into this bar, there's a spring motion to it. So you won't end up jamming the bar in the brake caliper and can't get it out. And this little angle right here will allow you to pry in on those calipers when they get way back into the piston. So this is a multi-purpose bar, and it's highly recommended that you have something like this when you're changing your brake pads or you're testing your caliper pistons. And you saw in the previous scene why I include in my kit this little aluminum protection plate. I don't need to say anything more about that. Along with these items, I provide you with some cleaning supplies. This brush here can help you wet down and wash down the caliper before you start working on it. This little curved pick tool, I put a special bend in this. This will allow you to clean those fittings on your flexible brake hoses before you remove them. And then this special brush can get in and clean inside the caliper grooves where the brake pads ride. Particularly this end here, this real thin brush can get in those corners and get all that crud, junk, and rust out of there. And then finally, once you've replaced the pads, cleaned the calipers, tested your pistons, when you put everything back together, you need to lubricate it properly. And I include this high temperature, it's a very expensive ceramic brake pad grease. I think this is the best stuff in the world right here. We include enough for a full set of brakes in the kit, along with some applicators to apply this grease, where to put the grease and how much to put, so that your pads will move freely in those calipers for the next 2 years until it's time to do this service again. I should also mention, if you have to remove the calipers from the vehicle, either for replacing the rotors or for some other reason, I have an on-demand video on my website which goes over the procedure of testing and exercising these calipers on the bench. This is a really good way to determine whether or not your calipers are going to need rebuilding, whether they're easily rebuildable, or whether they may be really difficult to rebuild. So I'll put links in the show more part of the description of this video that'll take you to this video here as well as the kit that I showed you earlier.